Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to piece together a puzzle that's scattered across 4 different parts of the Bible. It's all about this mysterious figure called the Servant of God. And as we connect the dots, you'll see how it completely flips the script on what power, sacrifice, and even salvation really mean. Okay, let's just jump right in. On the surface, it's a simple question, right? Who is this servant, and what was their job? But the answer, well, it unfolds across prophecies and psalms and letters, and trust me, it's not at all what anyone at the time was expecting. So, our first stop is with the prophet Isaiah. This is where this whole idea of the servant really comes into focus, in a few passages that give us our first major clues about just how big this person's mission was going to be. And right out of the gate, the sheer scale of this is wow. This is not about some local dispute or a small-time victory. No, the servant's job is to be a light to the nations, the goal to bring God's salvation to, and I'm quoting here, the ends of the earth. This thing is global from the get. Now, the original commentary we're drawing from uses the French serviteur, which is servant, and that title packs a double meaning. First, it's like a stamp of approval, a guarantee that God has this person's back, 100%. But it's also a job description, a mission. If you're God's servant, you are his #1 witness to the entire world. And what exactly is the servant supposed to be witnessing to? God's splendor or splendor. And we hear a word like splendor, we think of bright lights or something majestic. But biblically, God's splendor is his saving action made visible. It's when freedom is so real you can see it. When healing is so real you can feel it. That is God's splendor. Okay, but here's where it gets a little tricky, a real head-scratcher. The text says, flat out, you are my servant, Israel. Simple enough. But then, in the very next breath, it says the servant's mission is to gather Israel. So wait a minute, how can the servant be Israel and also be the one who gathers Israel? The idea here is that the servant represents a faithful core, like a remnant within Israel, whose job is to bring the whole nation back together so it can finally do its job for the world. So here's the bottom line from Isaiah, and it's a huge deal. This completely demolishes the popular idea of what the Messiah would be. Everybody was expecting a warrior king, someone to come in and crush their enemies. And instead, Isaiah gives them a humble servant. The mission isn't about domination, it's about salvation. And it's not just for one country, it's for everyone. But that leaves you wondering, right? If the servant isn't a conqueror, how do they actually bring about salvation? Well, for that answer, we have to turn to our second text, a psalm which completely redefines the whole idea of sacrifice. So get this line from Psalm 40. It says, "You did not want sacrifice or offering." Now, in a religion that revolved around sacrifices at the temple, that is a bombshell statement. It's basically saying God isn't interested in all those animal offerings. So, if not that, then what kind of sacrifice does God actually want? The Bible actually tracks this really fascinating evolution in what sacrifice means. It starts out, like it did in most ancient cultures, as a ritual to connect with God. But then Israel makes this radical move. No human sacrifice, period. Why? Because their God is the God of life, not death. Then the prophets push it even further. They start teaching that God doesn't want to be bribed with rituals. He wants a real relationship, one built on love. And that leads to this incredible final step. The ultimate sacred act, the ultimate sacrifice, isn't about taking a life anymore. It's about giving your own life to bring life to others. And the prophet Hosea just comes in and drops the mic, spelling it out so clearly for everyone. It is love that I want, not sacrifices. The true holy act isn't a ritual. It's love, it's mercy. And that just changes everything for our servant's mission. Okay, so we've got a servant with a universal mission based on loving service. But is it just one person's job? Well, our third text, a letter from the Apostle Paul, says nope. He blows the whole mission wide open for an entire community. So Paul is writing to the Iglesia, or church, in Corinth. And it's so easy for us to hear that word church and just picture a building with a steeple. But the original Greek word, ekklesia, means the called out ones. Its very definition is about a group of people who have been summoned by God for a mission. And he calls these people saints. Now, again, our modern brains hear saint, and we think of someone who's morally perfect, totally flawless. But that is not the biblical meaning. To be holy or a saint just means you belong to God. You've been set apart for His work. It's about who you belong to, not how perfect you are. So when you put those two ideas together, Paul's message is absolutely unmistakable. That huge, world-changing servant mission we saw back in Isaiah, it's not just for one special hero anymore. It's now the job, the collective responsibility of all the called ones, of everyone who belongs to God. All right, we've got all our puzzle pieces on the table now. We have a humble servant, a mission of loving sacrifice, and a whole community called to get in on the action. Our last text from the Gospel of John is about to snap all those pieces together with one stunningly unexpected image. So picture the scene. John the Baptist sees his cousin Jesus walking towards him. There's a crowd there, and they're all waiting for John to finally announce the Messiah, this powerful king they've been waiting for. But the title John gives him would have just shocked everyone. Behold the Lamb of God, not the Lion of Judah, not the conquering king, the Lamb. And that one title, Lamb of God, is loaded with centuries of meaning. It's the key that unlocks our whole story. First off, anyone hearing that would have immediately thought of the Passover lamb, the one whose blood was the sign of God's massive act of liberation, freeing the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. So, right away, this lamb is tied to freedom. Second, and this is huge, it pulls us right back to where we started. It connects directly to Isaiah's suffering servant, who was described as being like a lamb led to the slaughter, an innocent life given to heal the whole community. And third, and this might be the most powerful layer, it brings to mind the story of Abraham and Isaac, where Abraham says, God himself will provide the lamb. This is so important. It means this lamb isn't a sacrifice God demands from us. It's a sacrifice God provides for us. It's a gift. So there it is, the ultimate reversal of expectations. The world was geared up for a conquering king who would take lives to build a kingdom. And what they got was a sacrificial lamb who would give his life to liberate the world. But hang on, what does it actually mean he takes away the sin of the world? Because you can look around and see that evil and suffering are still very much a thing. The point here isn't that it's a magic trick that just poof, erases all bad things. It's more about breaking the power of sin, its ability to trap us in these endless cycles of violence and hate. Jesus, as the servant, opens up a new way to live, a path to freedom through love, forgiveness, and service. And that leaves us with a final question, doesn't it? The servant lamb didn't just finish a mission. He started a whole new way of living. So if salvation is a path that we're invited to walk down, what does it actually mean for us, the called ones, to be a servant, to be a light for others, right here, right now?